So what is up with the Irish and the Indians? In today's episode, we'll share the little-known story of the unlikely bond between the Native Americans and the Irish people.
In this episode, we'll be in Midleton, County Cork. And Midleton is probably perhaps best known as the home of Jameson whiskey.
Sláinte.
Sláinte.
But we stopped in Midleton on day 4 of this Irish road trip to see something a little more unique, the sculpture Kindred Spirits.
Today you'll hear about the relationship between the Irish and the Choctaw Nation of the United States. And this all stems from acts of generosity and kindness in times of great tragedy.
And if you'll stick with us till the end, we'll tell you why we felt it was important to share this story with you.
The United States was still young in the 1830s, and as it got bigger and more colonists had come over to the U.S. from Europe and other parts of the world, expansion started occurring. And everyone was moving west with the hopes of their own property. What occurred was they were invading on the existing Native Americans that had lived there for probably centuries. With the people moving further west, the government had to come up with a plan, and they decided that they would forcibly move these Indians from their homelands to what they called Indian Territory. The Choctaws, for one, they were one of the 5 civilized nations of the Native Americans. And they were forced to move from their home in Mississippi 500 miles to Oklahoma, which the U.S. had called Indian Territory.
So this took place in the winter, and the Indians had to walk from Mississippi, the 500 miles, to Oklahoma. They had a large number of their group that were women and children and the elderly. And a lot of them along the way died, and it was a very difficult trip for them. It was still wilderness in some places, so they had to walk these 500 miles to this new place that they had not chosen, that the government told them they had to go live on. And this became known as the Trail of Tears.
So let's fast forward 16 years to the year 1847. In Ireland, the Irish people are suffering from the Great Famine. And I believe this was probably right in the darkest part of the famine, because it had gone on for several years.
Yeah, I think they called that year Black 47. Colonized by the British, poor Irish tenant farmers raised grain crops for the British to export for profit. But the Irish farmers themselves raised potatoes, which were much less expensive for their own survival. Well, when there was a potato blight, famine struck. And rather than feed the Irish people the grain crops that they were making profit from, they continued to export those as much or more than they had before the blight, and the people began to starve. The British gave them virtually no help at all. They were concerned that the Irish would become dependent on the government if they did that. And so 1 million Irish people, it's estimated, died either of starvation or of disease related to it. Another 1 million Irish people emigrated to other countries. And we read some stories that were just hideous about people going onto these ships at the port to travel to other countries, and that was very dangerous as well. Many people didn't survive the journey. They called them coffin ships at times. And as they were going to find these ships, they would be at the port and they would be passing these ships full of grain that they had raised, and they were starving. And Britain was shipping all of that grain away to other countries to make money. It's estimated that the population of Ireland, between the people who died and the people who emigrated, was decreased by as much as 25% during that time.
So at this time back in the U.S., the Choctaw Nation was still trying to recover from their own difficulties that they struggled through, not only the Trail of Tears, but then resettling and refarming, looking for new places to hunt fish and raise their crops. And what we found amazing was, as bad a shape as the Choctaw Nation was, they had learned of the famine in Ireland, and they collected $170. It doesn't sound like much, but back then $170 would translate into $5,000 today, give or take. So that's quite something.
These were Native Americans in the 1800s in the United States, and we wondered how it was that they heard about this going on in Ireland. And when we did some research on it, we discovered that there had been a meeting of the Indian agents with the tribal leaders and some of the missionaries. And during that meeting, a gentleman came forward and read a pamphlet that was about the famine in Ireland. And the tribal elders were touched with this. They could really identify with the situation that the Irish were in.
Yeah, they were quite moved by this, based on their own experiences of colonization, mistreatment, suffering. They felt the need to lend any kind of assistance that they could. They sent the donation that they had gathered to the people of Ireland, who they felt were a kindred spirit to them.
And since that time, the bond between the two groups of people has actually continued. In 1990, several Choctaw leaders went to Ireland and participated in the first annual Famine Walk in County Mayo. 2 years later, the Irish leaders of that walk came to the United States and participated in the Trail of Tears Walk, which followed the route 500 miles from Mississippi to Oklahoma that the Choctaw people followed. Then also, one of the former Irish presidents, Mary Robinson, I believe, was named an honorary Choctaw chief.
Yep. So now let's bring it somewhat up to date to the year 2017. This is when the sculpture Kindred Spirits was dedicated in Midleton, County Cork. And from what I've read, it was unveiled 170 years to the day. I don't know how true that is, but 170 years to the day after the $170 donation was sent to Ireland from the Choctaw Nation. The sculpture consists of 9 20-foot tall stainless steel eagle feathers, and each one is different. And you'll notice it when you get there and walk around, and as you look up at it through the light, you never get the same view of it from one place to another. And it was formed to shape a bowl, and that signified the gift of food.
It was designed by artist Alex Pantek from County Cork, and we looked at some of his things online. He's done some beautiful installations. He works a lot in stainless steel items, which is what this is out of. At night, it's lit by multicolored lights, LED lights from the bottom. We were not there at night, but we have seen photos of it, and it is beautiful at night as well. We made a special trip to stop and see it, and it was really worthwhile to see. It was really beautiful.
It was worthwhile for us. And it wasn't that far out of our way, but...
No, it was fairly easy to get to.
Right.
If you're traveling down toward Cove or Cork, it's pretty easy to get to when you pass by Midleton.
Yes.
It's not too far off the main road. Now, the latest chapter of this story occurred just last year in August of 2024. A new sculpture, Eternal Heart, was dedicated on the Choctaw Capitol grounds in Tuscaloosa, Oklahoma. It consists of an 8-foot-tall Trinity symbol entwined with a heart in a continuous piece with no beginning and no end. It was designed by Samuel Stitt, a member of the Choctaw tribe, to symbolize the eternal bond between the Choctaw people and the Irish people.
It is a wonderful connection. The example of generosity in a time of adversity was adversity for us, but it also was the Choctaw at the time. I think it's a wonderful lesson for anybody.
And a little extra fact, the sculpture itself was intentionally placed to face Ireland.
So as Chris mentioned, this is not the typical thing for tourists to do when they're in Ireland. However, we wanted to let you know why it was we thought it was important to share this story with you.
It's a good story.
It is.
That's why.
There's everything involved in this story. There's history, there's geography, culture, art,
Tragedy.
great tragedy. Yes. there's politics and government involved in it. So it's a really big story, and we really enjoyed digging into it and hearing about it. We thought it was very meaningful, especially in today's world where things seem to be so polarized at this time in history. We really felt this was a worthwhile story to share about two different cultures from opposite sides of the globe who had an experience in common and went out of their way to help each other out. And now actually the Native American people and the Irish people work together to fight famine in different parts of the world.
So it's a story that just keeps giving.
It does. It does. So if you've enjoyed this video, we hope that you will consider subscribing to our channel. We'd love to have you. And if you'd like to see more of our videos, Chris, where can they see more of our videos?
Oh, probably one's up there, and the other one's going to be over here
Yep,
somewhere.
I think you're right.
Okay.
And we will see you next time. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye now.